quick break. I just want to say thank you for all the people around the world: Jamaica, Germany, Asia, Europe, South America. Thank you for listening to Leap of Health. Thank you for the support. And remember, my book is out. You can find it on Barnes and Nobles and Amazon. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Thank you again for all the support. And now back to our episode.
Everyone, this is your host, Alex Balgood, and this is Leap of Health. And today we have Dr. Catherine Clinton. She's an author, educator. She's a licensed neuropathic physician with a focus on gut health, autoimmunity, and psychoneuroimmunology. She specializes in pediatric health, I guess, or you advocate for pediatric health. And I am so pleased to have you here today. You're part of all of our friends at Quantum Biology Collective, which have been amazing guests in our podcast with a lot of really amazing information. But before we go and dive into what's grounding and everything that you're doing, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you end up here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you gave me a great introduction and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here talking about my favorite topics. Um, so I'm really excited. And quantum biology, how did I get started in all of this? I assisted with a midwife for many years, and she's now a quantum healer. And I knew that midwifery wasn't for me, so I chose the naturopathic route. And I went to medical school, and it was very, very different than I thought it was going to be. It was very rigorous. It was sort of that classical initiation that you go through in medical school, right? Long hours, and then you go to clinic, and very little sleep. And I got really sick. I got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called ulcerative colitis that affects the colon. And I was also diagnosed with Hashimoto thyroiditis, which affects the thyroid gland, and Lyme disease. So I was really suffering. It was a difficult time, but I was in the right place. I was at naturopathic medical school. I was working in tandem with the OHSU, which is a traditional allopathic medical school right up the hill. And there was a Chinese medicine school. So I had all the tools to kind of work my way back to health. But it wasn't until, and I used lifestyle and herbs and nutrition to help me piece back together where I was before I got diagnosed. But if anybody has a chronic illness or disease, they know that right before they were diagnosed is not like the picture of health, right? So that's when I started researching psychoneuroimmunology, how our thoughts affect our biology, as well as mitochondrial health. And from there, the doors to quantum biology blew open, and I've never left the room. It's just absolutely fascinating.
That's awesome. And I mean, I feel like for everybody that had listened to our podcast before, one of the coolest things is just getting our circadian rhythm uh set and running properly. And we do it so easy. Like I mean, like that's the best because we do it obviously with the sun. We wake up with the sun. We try to be connected outdoors with the outdoor light as much as we can. And it's just so fascinating to know that there's a lot of these things that can help us in our healing journey for free.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of those things that you find with quantum biology.
Absolutely. And that's what I love to share, right? Because naturopathic medicine, allopathic medicine, we all come with supplements and things to buy and all these therapies that are wonderful, but they aren't free and accessible to everybody. And in the last several years, the last decade, it's become more and more apparent the need for free, accessible medicine. If we're going to make a paradigm shift in science and in medicine, it has to be accessible, it has to be grassroots, it has to be the collective demanding it, because industry now is really profiting from this chemical model, which exists, right? Quantum biology doesn't negate the chemical model. It just has a much deeper layer of understanding that that chemical model is really coming out, being birthed from that quantum biological model. So, you know, there's this impetus to not leave that chemical model if you're making billions of dollars in that. But it's really exciting that we are starting to come around and the science is starting to really elaborate and also be funded privately, right? So there's NIH and people that the National Institutes of Health, right? The people that
Mm.
do the funding for science. It's really hard to get funding for some of these things. But now we're finding that people are stepping up as a collective and saying, we'll fund this research because we want to know. And so it's really an exciting time, I think, that we are mobilizing as a collective. And that free, accessible piece of it is so important because, making it this elite, fancy therapy or device or whatever it is, it cuts off that momentum. And that's what we need. We need that momentum of the collective saying, we need something more. We need something different. We need something expanded. And so I'm excited. I think it feels like for the first time, it feels like the tides are changing. And it's really exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. And I love that there's all these scientific proof of a lot of the things that you guys are going for. What are some of those research or stats that you have found so mind-blowing and amazing, and those the ones that you share with your clients or people that are trying to just be healthier?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that Gerald Pollack's work and so many other water researchers that are looking at biological water or water within plant cells, human cells, animal cells. Uh, it's absolutely mind blowing. And when you pair that with what we saw coming out in the early 2000s, 2007 and 10, from Fleming and Engel out of the UC of Berkeley, and then Seth Lloyd out of MIT, what they were doing is they were researching photosynthetic bacteria, looking for clues for quantum computing, right?
Mm.
Um, and so it's those two things paired together start to paint this amazing picture of our biology. So when I am looking at research, oh my goodness, oh, there's so many, but Gerald Pollack really tops the list. Maywan Ho is incredible, Albert St. Georgie. I love Martin Picard's work on emotions and mitochondrial health, heart math, and all kinds of polyvagal theory. There's so many different um, collaborative works that are sort of crossing over boundaries of science. And that's when I find it most exciting, right? There's a lot of evidence that we can find at the bottom of our microscope, and that's amazing. But when we plug that into a bigger picture, we start to see something really phenomenal. And that's really where I have been finding the most excitement is seeing how Gerald Pollack's work really plays in with some of the quantum biology or phenomenon that's happening in our living systems, tunneling, proton jumping. It's absolutely fascinating.
That is awesome. What's up proton jumping? I haven't heard that one.
Okay, yeah. So, um, I, are we familiar with structured water, or should I start there?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll start there because that's where we're going with proton jumping.
All right.
Um, so there were many like Albert St. Georgi, Gilbert Ling. There were Russian researchers. I'm spacing on their name right now, but there was this idea in science of the fourth phase of water. And it wasn't until Gerald Pollack and his team out of the University of Washington that first identified this
Mhm,
fourth phase of water. So we're familiar with liquid,
mhm,
water we drink, solid ice, gaseous steam, right? But there's a fourth phase of water that's gel-like, it's viscous, it has a much different texture, structure, feel to it. And
mhm,
this is the water that we're finding in living cells, plant, animal, our cells. And what Pollock found was that structured water is different than H2O. It's H3O2. And so if you're math minded, you can tell that we doubled the oxygen, but we didn't double that hydrogen, right? There's only three
mhm,
of them, there's one missing. So as this structured water builds, the hydrogens of the water, are bound more tightly and they create this hexagonal lattice shape, like a honeycomb shape,
mhm,
right? And as one sheet forms against this hydrophilic surface, and what is a hydrophilic surface? It's a water-loving surface. Our cell membranes are hydrophilic, our fascia is hydrophilic, our
mhm,
vessels, our blood vessels, our lymphatic vessels, those are all hydrophilic. Those all have structured water lining the outside and the inside. And
mhm,
so what you see is that as this structured water forms, one sheet will form and act as a template, and then many other sheets will start forming on it. And as it forms, it's kicking out a positive hydrogen, right? That H2O shifting to H3O2, and it's pushing out a proton. And so that structured water is negatively charged. And as it pushes out those positively charged protons, it creates what researchers are calling a proton wire. And this proton wire is positively charged. And Pollock and his team found that if you put an electrode in the negatively charged zone of the structured water, and you put another one in the positively charged proton wire that forms just outside that structured water, you get a separation of charge from that negative to positive. And just like a battery, that separation of charge can be used to power biological action. In fact, in his experiments, he found it was enough to light a light bulb, to power a light bulb. So on that proton wire, we see that proton jumping occurs almost instantaneously. And so when we're talking about quantum biology, we're talking about breaking some of these uh, classic physics, Newtonian physics, and some of the ideas and dogmas that have been around surrounding that, that you can't do that. Now we see quite clearly that's exactly what's happening. I think it was last year, researchers actually mapped out that proton wire from the structured water zone on the inside of our mitochondrial enzymes in the electron transport chain. And you see that these protons are doing just that. They're jump conducting. They're going from here to there over long distances instantaneously. So you have this sort of liquid crystalline matrix within the body that is able to communicate in a quantum speed and efficiency and manner that is just not possible with our Newtonian models. So it's really exciting, and that's what the proton jumping is. We
mhm,
see that in many different places, but it's really exciting to have it mapped out in places like the mitochondria, fascia.
mhm.
It's really really incredible what's happening when we start to open that box of quantum biology and see what's inside.
Mhm. How will that translate to someone that is listening to us? Like, they might be asking themselves, like, Okay, so how is that helping me or not helping me to understand better how uh, this energy or what the mitochondria is doing? Or now that I know what I have in, like in the fascia and all that, how does that looks to me? How is that gonna help me as an individual having all this knowledge?
Absolutely. Well, once we have that understanding of sort of what I call a water battery within us, right? We should be asking, what is powering that battery? What makes that structured water zone grow? What makes that proton wire really rich? And the answer is energy. So, from a very simplistic perspective, we can simply say that our health is dependent on the energy we're putting into our systems. And so we can think of circadian alignment with the sun, we can think of movement, we can think of grounding and making contact with that infinite sea of electrons that lines our earth. All of these things are adding energy into the system, adding energy into that structured water and that liquid crystalline matrix, and building those layers of structured water, which helps build that charge and that
Mhm.
battery for biological processes. So even if it starts to sound like, whoa, electrons and proton and what, the base the basic thing is what we have is this beautiful dance of water within our body that's powering biological action. And it's dependent not on the chemicals that we're taking in, right? Our calories, our food. It's dependent on our relationship with the world around us. It's dependent on our relationship with the earth. It's dependent on our relationship with the sun, with the water, with each other.
Mhm.
When we're talking about quantum biology and structured water, we also should be talking about the frequency of thoughts and emotion, because all of these things hold frequency information, and that is what structured water is doing. It's able to absorb, trap, and utilize this frequency information from all kinds of areas. So if we get lost in the sciencey words of it, we might miss the simple message that we're powered by our relationships with the world around us and our relationships with ourselves. And that inner dialogue and our perspectives and reactions, all of it is powering our physiology for better health.
Yeah, that was like an aha moment, like, oh, it's so great because I mean, it's just pretty amazing how we're built, literally. We hear all the time, the power is within you. Like, how does that look? How does that really translate to just anybody, right? And it's so simple. And just the way you're explaining it just makes so much sense because, I feel like this modern era in life has been trapped us inside of a little cube called home. And nobody wants to leave it because we're either consumed inside our house or work, which kind of like is the same thing because you're inside something foreign, or our phone, which is depleting ourselves from the actual power that we could be gaining for health reasons, like to keep getting us healthy and all that by going outside. And this is what we were talking about earlier. There are so many things that we can do for health for free so easily if we will just put health as our primary thing in our lists, all of our lists. And I think it's just so wonderful how you just mentioned, we could just go outside and look at the sunrise, look at the sunset, feel the sun in your skin as much as you can, right? Breathe fresh air, connect with, walk barefoot, collect electrons, negative electrons for your life. connect with others. And especially, I love what you're talking about, and how we also can change our health state with our thoughts. And that's something that you kind of specialize. How did all this information change the way you treat your patients, or the way you go about healing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was talk about aha moments when I was sick and getting better and was better enough to go back to school and sort of be productive. It was an aha moment to see how connected my health was to my stress levels and my thoughts, and to take accountability for that, right? I didn't want to. I didn't like that idea. And I also didn't like, as someone who experiences anxiety, it can be overwhelming for someone to say, your health is a product of your thoughts. Like, not only are you anxious, but that makes you more anxious. And then you have these sort of
Yeah.
subconscious trains of thoughts or ruminating thoughts. And I think that it was a really aha moment to understand that. And it was even more of an aha moment to say, intentional thoughts have more power than some of these subconscious trains of thought, right? So if we experience anxiety or depression or ruminating thoughts, the power of a positive thought, intentional positive thinking, can really carve that neurological canyon in our brain. And that's what we see with those subconscious trains of thought, right? When below the age of 7, we kind of absorb these subconscious trains of thought from our environment, our parents, our peers, our family, our community, our environment, and they can play for our entire lives without us realizing. And so when we can understand that there's something more at work, it's not just this pull yourself up by your bootstraps and think positive. And, it's, we are enmeshed in so many different consciousnesses. So if we can really tease it out, this is a subconscious train of thought. And even though it is coming and it is uncomfortable, I have the power to carve a new neurological canyon with a positive thought that's intentional, because that intention, especially when we're talking about quantum biology, that
Mhm.
intention holds so much power. And our medicine has used that power as the useless piece of
Mm.
research, right? Placebo is what you throw out to look at what really matters. And we've made such a misstep here because the power of our thoughts, and again, those intentional thoughts, are incredible and really not harnessed in mainstream medicine. I mean, when you look at placebo research, it's very young. It hasn't been that long that we've been teasing out the power of the mind and placebo. Some of the first studies with placebo were done in Japan with leaves, kind of like poison oak and poison ivy, right? But native to Japan. And so they found children that had a medical history of being very hyperreactive to this type of leaf. So
Mhm.
they conducted a study with them, and they said, this leaf is not allergic. It's not the one you're allergic to. It's not poisonous. And they rubbed it on their arm. And then they took one that was benign, it wasn't the poisonous leaf, and said, this one is poisonous though, so let's see what happens. And they rubbed it on their arm. Not one child produced an allergic reaction. And the power of that it's just amazing to me that our institutions looked at that and decided to use that as the throwaway for studies rather than exploring the power of that for healing. And it's not just our placebo effect, right? That study clearly shows the entrainment that
Mm-hmm.
happens between our minds, right? And that
Yeah.
collective ability to pass that um, confidence or lack of confidence or whatever it is as a
Mm-hmm.
collective. And imagine if we were harnessing that in a doctor's office, but as a community, as a globe. I mean, what a different world this would be. So, psychoneuroimmunology is really just that, how our thoughts impact our biology, and it is woefully underappreciated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. There's so many studies, obviously, with medicine, and obviously they put the placebo to see, um, the effects or what's working and what's not working and all that. And yeah, it's just amazing how, um, it's unfortunately that these uh, pharmaceutical industries have disregard the the power of the mind as is, like how some people gets to um, get their health better just with that thought of like this medicine is helping me when it's just a sugar pill.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many studies too, like not only with medicine and obviously sugar pills within the placebo effect and all that, but I mean, there's also been school research and all that. When I don't know if you ever read it, I can't remember who was the researcher, but it was pretty much these two classrooms, and they were told to the teachers. One of them was told, your students can really learn, they're having a hard time, and so that's what is. And on
Mhm.
the other one, they told them, your classroom is one of the most higher IQ in the school.
Mm.
So, you talking about the collective, when these two teachers went on to teach them, one of them had the belief and the passion that they had the highest IQ in the school. And that's what they became. They became the highest score, the most smart kids in the school. And the other ones were just like not succeeding, not passing the exams, having trouble learning. I mean, how powerful we are that we can actually do that. It's just so incredible.
It's absolutely incredible. And for healthcare practitioners, I think it's really important to understand that not only are we maybe the only safe harbor that our patients have, right? It's very important for us to hold space in a safe manner. But the entrainment that happens in a relationship like that is so powerful. That's the medicine. And everything that comes after that is the unfolding of the medicine. But that is the starting point, right?
Mhm.
And from a quantum biological perspective, you could say that that's the coherence needed for those things to happen within our biology. And when we're bracing against danger or have a belief that's going against whatever it is, that acts as a physical obstacle, even though it's not. They're connected, and that creates a physical barrier in our fascia, in our neurology. It's incredible how connected it all is.
Mm-hmm. And also, too, this when we talk about how our thoughts can really manifest into like a disease, something really physical now.
Mhm.
Because some people might be like, well, I just have this immuno disease or like this other illness.
Mhm.
But, and we try to go and look at the physical illness as just that, but
Mhm.
a lot of those illness are tied together to what we feel, to what we think, or recurring thoughts. And we're really it's one of those, again, aha moments, is that sometimes we feel like, because you talk about all these thoughts that get ingrained kind of like in our DNA, in our body since we were little.
Mhm.
that they could just go over and over and over. But then as an adult, we're like, well, I'm not thinking about anything. It's nothing. And I feel like a lot of us, we just really disregard what had happened to us because we think, oh, that's just kind of like, it's gone. I don't think about that anymore. But it's ingrained in our DNA and it's making
Mhm.
us sick and it's making us manifest all these craziness within the body. So I think it's just like super important to think about that element when it comes to try to get us healthy.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's ingrained in our body and it's something we pass down
Mhm,
epigenetically,
mhm.
generationally, right? Those
Right.
stress responses and that reactivity, our biology is used to the environment we evolved over millennia in, right? This environment we're in now is so intense. Of course, there's always been threats, there's always been danger, but we're bombarded with that, right? Waking up with the alarm clock is like the sets you off with that danger signal, and then you're late and you're in traffic with, I when I talk about stress, I'm talking about fight or flight reactions, fight, flight, freeze. And that happens when there's a threat. So if a bear were to jump in the room right now, I would be in that fight, flight, or freeze. But we don't realize that we drive to work with bears, we work with bears. Sometimes there are bears in our family, in our community. The TV is just a huge bear shouting at us. There's so many different places where the stress comes from. And to start to unravel that, like if we took a second right now to think about our day and think about how much of it was a conscious choice, right? I It's not a huge percentage of the day. So much of it is on autopilot, right?
Mhm,
When we're getting ready in the morning, we're not consciously thinking, okay, I need to turn the water on in the shower. It's just an unconscious act. So
mhm,
I agree, we don't realize we are just playing these subconscious trains and never realizing that we're writing them, right? Because so much of our daily existence is on autopilot. It is subconscious. It's not a pure presence and conscious decision for everything we make, and nor should it be. We can't survive that way, right? That's how we're made, to be able to multitask and do many different things at once. But to create that space within our lives, to create that presence, to create the space to cultivate relationships with the sun and the soil and the water, is really where the medicine is.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. And all of it. Remember out there, everyone listening all over the world that listens to this podcast, it's free. These
Yeah.
are all the things that we all have access to. You
Mhm.
could, if you live in the city, you could go to the park
Yep.
and walk barefoot as much as you can. Stay there.
Yep.
Look at the sun. Tan a little bit. Don't use, all these chemical based sunscreen and all these other things that we think they're protecting us. One of the things that Heather, one of our guests, and her too, Heather Shepard, she broke my heart when she told me I can't no longer use sunglasses. But I gotta say, I mean, it's been a long time now that I have not used sunglasses when I go outside. And let me tell you, I feel like my eyes are very strong now. The first
Mhm.
time I took out my sunglasses, I was like, oh my God, I feel like a vampire. I can't take it. I don't know if I could, see the sun. It was too much. But that's because I predisposed my eyes to be with sunglasses
Yeah.
since I was like 14.
Oh, yeah. No, I hear you. It was hard to give those up. They were like the perfect mask. You just put on your sunglasses, little lip balm, and you're set. That was what was hard for me. It was my summer outfit, but the health exchange is like there's nothing that can compare to that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I like that you mentioned like all these simple things to do, right? Go outside, um, ground yourself, feel the sun, look at the light, the sunlight, uh, connect with others and your thoughts. What are some of the things that you use for your own health to get out of the vicious circle of negative thinking and just to better your health in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I really resonate with more of the moving meditations. I love qigong. I love shaking. Um, and if you hung out with me for a while, you would see me at some point shaking. I was. It's a pretty easy thing to do. It's free. We see animals do it, right? When we look at animal psychology and what happens after an animal experiences like a prey predator interaction or an extreme stress, we see that shaking happen. And I love shaking. I love EFT. I love TRE. These are both things that YouTube has tons of different
Mhm.
really informative videos. EFT is tapping
Happy.
on some of our meridians
Mhm.
throughout the face and the collarbone and hands, and it's a wonderful way to do it. But I think honestly, you know, those are things that I incorporate when I'm by myself, but
Mhm.
in a stressful situation, I think that coming back to gratitude and breath are hands down the easiest way for me to come back in my body, back in the presence of what's real versus this imagined sort of existential threat or whatever that's causing the anxiety, right? To come
Mhm.
back to that breath and come back with a sense of gratitude, even if I'm in the throes of whatever it is,
Mhm.
anger, panic, whatever it might be, just aligning that breath. And there's so many different breaths out there. I mean, there's the box breath where you're breathing for, holding for, exhaling for type of thing. I like to just focus on making my exhales longer than my inhales, especially in that moment, right? If I'm, at a board meeting or something and I need to tend to my nervous system, but standing up and shaking or tapping on my face is not going to be, you know, quite the social thing to do. I can just come back to my breath. I can come back to gratitude. And I think for myself and my family and my patients, the Heart Math Institute and their exercises around heart coherence have been life changing
Mhm.
because it's not only the breath and the breathing, but you're working on that heart rate variability and that coherence or alignment between the heart and the brain. And when we're experiencing those depleting emotions of anger and anxiety and frustration, depression, all of those emotions we uh,
Mhm.
understand as depleting, we see that it has a direct impact on our heart rate variability, as well as like the crosstalk between the heart and the brain. And we experience that, right? When we're feeling those feelings, we don't feel grounded or connected. We feel like this is going and we're going,
Mhm.
but it's not this coherent talk between the heart and the brain. And what does that mean? I keep saying coherent. What does that mean? So, our heart actually is sending more signals to the brain than vice versa. It has 500 times the electrical field, 1,000 times the magnetic field of the brain. The heart is really registering a lot of these environmental cues from our environment. And so if we can enter into situations where our heart and our brain are coherently wired, then what we see is we see that our frontal lobe is innervated. And our frontal lobe is what's in charge of calm, rational decisions, right? And when it's not coherent, that is innervating the hindbrain, the amygdala, and fear, our fear responses. So heart coherence is really important. It allows for a calmer respiratory rate. And that respiratory rate and heart rate influence so many different biological processes in the body. So for me, I've really rested so much gratitude around what the HeartMath Institute has done with all of their research. And their heart coherence exercises are really, really incredible. And heart rate variability, for those that aren't familiar with that term, heart rate variability is the measure of the nervous system input into the heart. So our nervous system has two branches that we've been talking about, that fight, flight, freeze response from stress or threat, right? But there's the opposite side. There's that parasympathetic side where we rest and digest and we feel safe and we're creative, right? And so those two sides innervate the heart and are constantly telling our heart what's happening. And if we have a high level of health and adaptability, we're able to switch, right? So when we talk about the heart rate, we think of like bump, 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 like a metronome. And really, it's not. It's increasing with that fight or flight, sympathetic innervation, and then immediately a parasympathetic response comes in. And so it slows down. And it's doing that all the time. And that's what a healthy heart rate variability should look like. It should look like very variable, right? Quite variable, so that it's able to adapt to all of those different inputs from our environment. And what we're finding is a lot of people have low heart rate variability. They're stuck in one pattern. They can't vacillate between both nervous systems. And that is a direct measurement of our heart coherence. When we are coherent between the brain and the heart, that ability to adapt to those nervous system inputs is greatly increased, as is our health and all of that. But that's what that measure is really looking at. It's looking at our ability to adapt to those stressful inputs or those safety inputs, and how heart coherence with the brain impacts our ability to do so. And that's directly a quantum biological phenomenon, the ability for quantum coherence in a system. And yeah, so I think that for me, HeartMath has been wonderful. And it's still, you can access these heart coherence exercises on YouTube. They're free. And it becomes an exercise that over time you can do the breathing and the visualization. And basically, should we spend 2 minutes doing one right now?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. So it's way better than explaining, right? We're just going to get comfortable. We're going to take a deep breath. And we're going to let out any tension. We're going to let those shoulders drop. And don't worry about the rate of your breathing. Just make it nice and comfortable, nice and slow. Nice long exhale. Letting go of any tension in the shoulders, in that jaw. Releasing any tension in the back, in the hips. And as we're breathing, we're going to bring our attention to our heart. You can place your hand over your heart to emphasize this area. And we're going to breathe that nice, calm breath into that heart center. Again, not paying any attention to rhythm, just whatever feels comfortable and relaxing. Nice, deep breathing into that heart center. And as we continue to breathe into our heart center, we're going to focus on a feeling of love, on a feeling of gratitude. It can be an experience that you've felt before, a memory. It can be a goal or an aspiration of what this would look like if I did that. Whatever it is that you find brings you that sense of love, gratitude. Sometimes I picture my children hugging me. Sometimes I picture the earth hugging me. I love laying down on hot rocks in the summer, taking a cold dip in the stream, and then getting out on a nice hot rock, soaking up that infrared heat while the sun kisses my cheeks. A feeling of complete contentment and gratitude. Whatever it is for you, we're going to keep that feeling in mind and we're going to expand it out. So it's not just a memory or a thought, but it's an actual feeling. We're going to keep breathing into that heart while we experience that feeling of love, joy, gratitude. Actually feeling the ripples of that emotion, expanding out from the heart, out throughout our body, all the way through our feet, through the top of our head. So that is just a quick 2-minute example of what a heart coherence exercise can look like. And that's something that we can cultivate over time, that we can have an image in our head that allows us to go to that place in our heart so that we can access those feelings and that coherence, even if we're at a stressful meeting or a intense social environment or whatever it is. That practice of becoming coherent in our heart has a really big impact on our biology. And so that's one of my favorite free accessible tools to start with for people, is become coherent, because that's the backdrop for all those other things that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. No, and it was great. I just feel like even just breathing, I have said it before, we just are so busy with life. And it's understandable, life happens and sometimes happens really quickly, especially if you have to take care of little ones or, you're a caregiver, things like that. Like all these things happen, right? No life is perfect. No life is just pink and unicorns and all that. But having the tools is just as amazing as we will actually have a perfect life. And I think breathing is just one of those things that we really forget. And it just happens. We're just going, that throughout the whole day, we just forget to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And it's just so crazy to me. But it's so cool that we can, you know what, when you're like super stressed or you need to do an exam or whatever it is, just come back to this, you
Mhm.
know, 2 minutes. Remember, we scroll on social media for 15 minutes average.
Yeah.
2 minutes is nothing. And it's
Yeah.
just a matter of practice, because I feel like the more we do things like that and the more we're conscious about these things, they become easy and easier every time. Because I feel like, even myself, I don't think I was like full on into my body until like recently. Now I take a walk every day, like around noon, to get some sun, to get the light, to get the circadian rhythm, to get my movement. And now I've been just, it's just been happening. Now, as I'm walking, I'm like breathing and telling my body to like heal whatever it's tense or whatever it's inflamed, or, just having these amazing thoughts of empowerment towards my body, my psyche, my soul, my everything, just doing that, it really makes the day go by in such a better way.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just so easy and free. Come on, guys. You guys
Yeah.
can all do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's where I start my patients, is I try to amaze them with the science and the power and the possibility. And then I say, I'll talk to you in a week after you have tried a week of circadian alignment. And I've never had anyone come back and say, okay, yeah, I mean, I did that, but it's always a
Yeah.
window into so much more healing. So, yeah, kudos on taking that walk every day, getting
Yes.
all that frequency information that we need from everything. It's just absolutely amazing how interconnected it is. We're so used to thinking of little boxes and compartments, and we really don't end at the barriers of our skin. There's so much happening in the world around us that impacts us. So that's what I
Yeah.
really love about quantum biology.
Yeah, definitely. I am a fan. I mean, everything. And it just makes so much sense. We go back to our roots or
Yeah.
home, which is our planet, and everything that helps us live, with in a better health. So it's just really cool, all the information and everything that you have shared today. I mean, I'm still like, come on, everybody, you can do it. This is not hard. It's easy. You don't have to go anywhere. Pretty much, if you live in the city, go to the park, go out, find a patch of grass.
Yeah.
You could do it. And just, admire the beauty that our planet has done, and made for us. Pretty much, it's just such a win situation here, and it's just so hopeful. Overall, and I love it. I love everything that you're doing and everything that the quantum biology is doing. Shout out to everybody out there. I love them. Thank you for sharing all the information and keep spreading the word, right? Is there something else that you would like to share before we go?
No, I just love talking about this, and I really deeply believe that not only is it the key to our health, but it's the key to our planet's environmental crisis as well. I think that once we really understand these interconnections, we see quite clearly that we are nature and there's no us without it, and vice versa. So, well, not quite vice versa, but that relationship that
Yeah.
we have with the world around us is really, really powerful. So I just invite everyone to open that window up to a relationship with the sun, or a relationship with a patch of dirt or a tree or something outside of ourselves in the ecosystem around us, because that's really what it is there for. It's there for our healing, it's there for a relationship. So I
Mhm.
just invite everyone to start building those relationships, because they give back in untold ways. It's truly life-changing. So thank you so much for having me on today. And thank you for doing this. Thank you for spreading the word because we really need this to be a household idea and concept and not something that, as soon as we say quantum, people are like, oh, quantum, quantum. But no, we
Yeah.
mean quantum and it's important and it's not a funny magic word. It's a real thing and it has real power. So thank you for spreading the word.
Thank you, doctor. And for anybody else that would like to get in contact with you, see what you're doing in social media, all your tips, or they want to just one-on-one with you, it's a session, where can they find you?
Well, I'm Dr. Catherine Clinton everywhere. So my website is drcatherineclinton.com. I'm Dr. Catherine Clinton on Facebook and Instagram, and I love sharing. I have free resources on my website. I'm love to share on social media, so I'm always sharing information there. So come join the conversation.
Yes, awesome. And I will put all your information on the show notes for everyone that wants to get in contact with you. For everyone else that wants to take a look at everything else that I'm doing, you can find me on alexbelgood.com. You can find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, pretty much everywhere. Don't forget, my book is out. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Now you have many more tools on your healing tool belt, and they're free, so don't forget that. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, doctor, for being here today. And please, everyone, have a blessed day today.